Hello, my name is Aubrey, and today I have 10 found family recommendations for you. So I absolutely love found family elements in my stories, and I find that a lot of my very favorite books and series have found family elements. Not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them do. It's an element that, when done well, I just tend to love. I find it very endearing, and I think it's a theme that a lot of you out there love as well. So I decided to put together a list of 10 of my very favorite found family books and series. So let's get to it. My very first found family recommendation is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I read this last year. I believe it made it into my top 3 reads of the year. I absolutely adored it, and one of the biggest reasons why I adored it is because of the found family. So we're following Tress, who is a young girl. She's a window washer. She collects teacups. The unusual thing about her life is that she lives on this like tiny little island in the middle of the Emerald Sea. The Emerald Sea is made up of spores. These spores in the Emerald Sea are incredibly deadly. If they come into contact with water of any kind, they'll like sprout and kill you. Nobody tends to leave the island because of how dangerous it is. However, one day, the love of her life gets taken on a voyage with his father, and he does not return. Tress takes it upon herself to go and rescue him, and along her journey, she ends up on a pirate ship, and she has to, make her way on the pirate ship and belong and be useful and use her brain and her wits. And the characters that she meets on the pirate ship are so memorable and fun. Of course, some of them are scary, but some of them, really do take care of her and look out for her and help her come into her own. I really love this book. I love Tress. I love her character arc and her friendships coming to belong in this group of people. It's just wonderful to see. So if you haven't picked this up yet, I highly recommend it. Next up, I have The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. In this instance, I am recommending the entire Winnowing Flame trilogy, as I think, to get the full scope of the found family elements, you have to read the whole thing. Now, there are so many things that I love about the Winnowing Flame trilogy. The world building especially is very weird and interesting and fascinating. The characters are fun, but I think the thing that made me fall in love with the series the most is the way that our characters interact with each other. We are following a vampiric elf, a fire witch, and a rich, eccentric scientist. They are all working together to look into a common enemy that seems to resurface every few hundred years. This enemy has left behind remnants all over the world that are kind of weird and bizarre. And so they're checking out these sites and working together. There's a lot of tension at first between them because each of these groups, like the vampiric elf and the fire witch and the human, historically there's been a lot of animosity between these groups. And so we see on this micro scale how a lot of those, sort of politics play out. But it's a lot of fun, the way that they bicker and banter and, their quips back and forth. Eventually that leads to teasing each other, and then that evolves into, a real love and fondness for each other. Watching that evolution between the group dynamic was just delightful. And I think especially in books 2 and 3, we get introduced to a lot more characters that add a lot of really fun dynamics. Watching everyone come together and really become this tight knit unit is just so great, and it's so much fun, and it's really rewarding. I think in general this series is really underrated. I have gushed about it a lot recently on my channel. If I haven't convinced you yet, I'm gonna keep trying. The Ninth Reign, the Winnowing Flame trilogy, please read it. Taylor, if you're watching this, I see you, I heard you, and I got you. Next up, I have Fruits Basket. I had to put this on the list because in one of Taylor's most recent videos, she went on a little mini rant about how Fruits Basket has one of the best found family storylines. She's not wrong, so here it is on my list. If you don't know Fruits Basket, I am just so excited for you. Because Fruits Basket is just an utterly delightful series. If you want something that will charm your socks off and then squash your heart and make you cry and then give you a hug afterwards, look no further than Fruits Basket. We're following our main character Toru, who becomes homeless through some events in her life, and she's living in this tent in the middle of the wilderness, and along come some boys that she goes to school with, and they discover that she's living in this tent. They decide to bring her home because that's just a very sad situation. However, these boys and their entire family have this massive secret, and the secret is that they and a few of their family members, when hugged by the opposite sex, turn into animals of the zodiac. Of course, Toru finds out this secret, and she is sort of sworn to secrecy, and she's brought into this family and all of these intense family dynamics and traumas and secrets. She just gets to know all of them. I think one of the things that makes this series so special and memorable is Toru, who is the main character, and I feel like she just has this utterly gentle soul, and everyone that she meets, I feel like she can just pierce into the heart of them. Like, she can just get to the root of somebody within moments of meeting them. She is so compassionate and sympathetic, and she really listens to people, and she's a good friend. And so the way that she's able to meet and connect with every single family member and how she wins them over with how, you know, kind and sincere she is, it's just so good. And the way that she is able to knit this family back together that's so tumultuous and full of, again, trauma and secrets. And she just sort of comes in and is able to just gently give everybody room to be themselves and to grow and heal. And it's just beautiful, okay? It's an excellent story. There's a really fun love triangle for a good bit of the story if you're into that. It's a delight, and I would highly recommend it. Now, if you're not into manga, the anime adaptation on Hulu is also pretty good. All right, next up, I of course have Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. In Legends and Lattes, we are following an orc who is an ex-barbarian. She decides to give up a life of violence in order to open a coffee shop. It's kind of silly, but it's also really sweet. We watch as she interacts with this new town, and she gets her start, and she's trying to figure out how to have a successful business and connect with her customers and connect with the community. We watch as they slowly accept her, and she slowly accepts herself, and it's just really sweet and really charming, and I thought it was cute and a good time. So I'm sure you've heard of Legends and Lattes, but some of you out there may not have given it a try yet, and if you like found family, I really think you'll enjoy it. Next up, I have just one of my very favorite series of all time. Oh wow, that's so shiny. It's The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the Raven Boys. This is the Fairy Loot edition that has a lot of foiling, so I do apologize if I'm blinding you at the moment. The way I would die for these characters and the way that they would all die for each other, I just love this series. We have our sort of main character, Blue, who is the daughter of some clairvoyants, and she kind of gets roped into this group of boys. There are these 4 pretentious, rich boys that kind of stumble into her life. They're on an adventure trying to find ley lines and magical, mystical stuff in the forest. Ultimately, they are trying to find a dead Welsh king that's been buried somewhere, and if they find him, they think that he will grant them a wish. She gets roped into some shenanigans, as well as her family. Lots of weird paranormal stuff happens. The love that they all have for each other is so palpable. Like, I don't know if I've read a series where the characters feel as real as these characters feel to me. They feel like real people who exist out in the world. The town that they live in feels like a place I could just drive to. I just feel like everyone matters and everyone plays their part. And again, I love their found family, like Blue and the boys, and her love for the boys, and the boys' love for her, and the boys' love for each other. It's beautiful, it's fun, there's a lot of banter, there's a lot of humor, you know, they pick on each other and tease each other, but, you know, their character growth and the way that they support each other, it's just... The Raven Cycle is so special. For the people who don't get it, I wish I could bottle it up and give it to you, because it's such a good series. And I know it doesn't work for everybody, and that's okay, but I love it. I think it's fantastic, just wonderful found family, like excellent found family. All right, next up I have Spy Family. I just love Spy Family, and I feel like I don't get to talk about it enough, so I'm putting it on the list so that I can gush about it a little bit. Spy Family takes the found family trope and uses it very literally. So we are following a spy who's been given this mission where he needs to come up with a family in order to execute this very dangerous mission. So specifically, he needs a daughter to go to a school to befriend a very important man's son so that he can get in with that family. So he finds an orphanage and he adopts a daughter, and he, you know, is training her to get into this prestigious school, to be well behaved, and to pass all of her tests. He's worried that being a single father is gonna look bad, so he also needs to find a wife. And he finds this woman who is willing to have this arrangement where they kind of pretend to be married because she is in her 30s, and she is worried that being unmarried is going to make her look bad in the eyes of the government. And so he cobbles together this little family, but what he doesn't know is that his new daughter is a telepath and his new wife is an assassin. And it's just great. It's so great. The wife doesn't know that he's a spy. Nobody knows that the daughter is a telepath. And of course, the daughter, being a telepath, knows everything. But she is, I think, around 4 years old or something. And so, you know, she doesn't quite understand it all. And she, you know, she looks up to her parents and she's like, oh man, they're so cool. My dad's a spy and my mom's an assassin, and wow. And it's just so good. It's delightful, it's funny, it's campy and over the top. It's just it's got it all. If you haven't jumped on the Spy Family hype, I beg you. It's a good time. I will say that I think the early volumes are better than the later volumes have been, though I'm not totally caught up. I think I've only read up to volume 6 or 7, so maybe it's getting better. But even my husband, who is not into manga or anime, I made him sit down and watch it and he really enjoyed it. So do with that what you will. Next up, I have another Brandon Sanderson novel, and this is Skyward. I really enjoyed Skyward, and I think one of the things that I loved the most about it was, one, the mystery. There is a really fun mystery at its heart, but two, the found family. In Skyward, we're following our main character Spensa, who lives on this planet where this alien race lives up in outer space, and they sort of come down and wreak havoc. And so their entire culture revolves around this armada that fights against this alien race. Spensa's father was in the armada, and one day when the aliens come down, he deserts. In his desertion, I think he gets shot down and dies. It's been a while since I read this, so I'm sorry if I'm a little hazy on the details. Because of this desertion, her whole family has been sort of tainted by this. She's looked down upon, her whole family is looked down upon because her father did this, and she is labeled a coward, and her father is labeled a coward. Spensa really resents this. She doesn't think that her father deserted. She doesn't know what happened that day. She doesn't understand why her father would do something like that, because everything that she knows and remembers about him screams that he wouldn't have done that. She hates this label, and she is determined to train as a pilot to prove everyone wrong about her and her father. And so of course, you know, there's a lot of animosity in the classroom with the other students at first, but throughout the story we really see them grow. We see the students start to accept her and trust her. In turn, she starts to, you know, like and trust them. And I just remember really loving that part of the story. I think this had a lot of really fun side characters, including a sentient ship who's a little bit sassy. A sassy robot wins me over every time. Personally, I've only read this first one, so I can't speak to the rest of the series, but I did really love the found family elements in this first one. Next up, I have my very favorite book from last year, and it is The Adventures of Amina El-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. There are so many things to love about this series. Our main character, Amina, is just so much fun. She was an infamous pirate captain. She's had a multitude of different husbands. She has been swashbuckling and adventuring. Now she is this middle-aged woman who's retired with her daughter in the middle of nowhere, trying to just sort of live a comfy, normal life. One day, this rich woman shows up on her doorstep with an offer for one last adventure with a high reward that she just can't refuse. And so she has to like get the band back together, find all of her old crewmates who are either retired or, you know, doing something else. Gotta go find them and scoop them back up and get them to go on this last adventure with her. While the family in question has kind of already been found once, the fact that we're like getting everyone back together, all this time has passed and there are grievances that need to be rectified and apologies that need to be made. Watching this like old group of friends who have so much history together but have been apart for so long come back together, and just all of their, you know, sass and their jokes and how well they know each other, and just like, it's so fun. Genuinely, the like assembling the team part of the story was probably my favorite of the whole thing. Getting introduced to each of these characters and their personalities. It's just delightful. I love them all. Everyone needs a best friend like Dalila. I love this book. I love this group of people. I can't wait for the series to continue. I will be gobbling each of these books up, I can tell. All right, next up I have Full Metal Alchemist. I contemplated putting this on the list because it's not like a warm, fuzzy kind of found family, but I do think this still has a lot of elements of found family, and it just has some of the best characters and character work I've ever read. So Full Metal Alchemist is about two brothers who, as young, budding alchemists, decided to try to bring their mother back to life with alchemy. It goes horribly wrong. The youngest brother loses his entire body, and the oldest brother, Edward, loses his arm and his leg. He's able to transmute his youngest brother's soul into a suit of armor, and lucky for him, he also happens to be neighbors with two amazing women who work with automail. And it's this, you know, lightweight yet really strong metal that they're able to make a prosthetic arm and leg for him. They both dedicate their lives to being amazing alchemists, but also they are on the hunt for the Philosopher's Stone, and the Philosopher's Stone will allow them to break the rules of alchemy, basically. And the number one rule of alchemy is that matter cannot be created nor destroyed. You can't make more out of less. If you were going to say, make a radio with alchemy, you would need all of the exact components of that radio, all the metal, all the minerals, in order to make it. A Philosopher's Stone will allow you to make more from less. They are on this journey to find this stone because they believe that this is the key to getting their original bodies back. In order to have access to more power and knowledge, Edward, the oldest brother, decides to join the military, which he hates. There's just a lot of really interesting relationships and dynamics between him and some of these other military members. The bond that he shares with his brother is so beautiful and strong, but it's also, you know, steeped in this tragedy and melancholy, and this, you know, this thing that they did is always hanging over their heads, and it sort of bleeds into every relationship that they have with, you know, anyone else. It's just really good. Like I said, the characters are top-notch. Not only the two brothers, but everyone we meet along their journey is just so excellent. I feel like even the villains in this story can just be a lot of fun to spend time with and to see pop up out of the shadows. It's just a good series, and it has a lot of those found family elements, which is acceptance and redemption and forgiveness. There's a reason why this is one of the best-selling mangas of all time. It's amazing, and you should read it. And my very last recommendation is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. I just love Nettle and Bone so much. We are following a somewhat like disgraced princess. She is the youngest of three daughters, and at the beginning of the story, I think she'd been kind of sent off to a nunnery or something. Her oldest sister was married off to this prince. She mysteriously died. And then her second oldest sister, the middle sister, gets sent off to marry that same prince to keep the alliance with this kingdom intact. We find out that that is not a very good situation for her. And so our main character, Mara, has to go on this journey to try to save her sister from her asshole husband. On the way, she enlists the help of a witch with a demonic chicken and a fairy godmother who has very peculiar talents. There's also a bone dog, like an animated dog made out of bones. It's quirky, it's fun. It has just like a surprising, delightful charm to it. It's a quest story done right. It has so many of my favorite elements. Of course, found family. The humor, there's a splash of romance, it's dark and weird, just all of my favorite things. I love Nettle and Bone. If you are looking for like a nice short fantasy quest story with found family and very quirky characters, you gotta read Nettle and Bone. You gotta read it. Alright, so that is my list. Thank you so much for watching. If you were looking for something else to watch, I will leave my top 10 books of last year recommendation video right here for you. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more from me. I hope to see you next time. Bye!